When I moved into Maplewood Estates, I thought I was finally leaving the past behind. The place looked like the kind of neighborhood you only saw in real estate ads: clean streets, perfectly trimmed lawns, white fences, and neighbors who smiled just a little too politely. I'd saved for years, working double shifts and skipping every luxury I could just to afford this small townhouse on the edge of the community. It was supposed to be a fresh start, but I didn't know I was walking straight into my past. The first day I arrived, I noticed something strange. Every house had the same type of mailbox, the same curtains, even the same welcome mats. It was eerie, like the neighborhood had been cloned. I laughed it off and told myself I'd get used to it. After all, I'd been through worse. Nothing could shake me now, or so I thought. It wasn't until the HOA meeting that I saw him. The man standing at the front of the clubhouse looked older, his hair peppered with gray, his posture straighter than I remembered. But the moment he spoke, my stomach twisted. That voice, steady, deep, deliberate, it was the same one that used to read me bedtime stories when I was a kid. The HOA president was my father. Or at least the man who used to be my father, before he disappeared 20 years ago without a word. I sat frozen in the back of the room while he talked about community standards and property value compliance. He didn't glance my way once, not when he collected signatures, not when he dismissed the meeting. I kept waiting for his eyes to land on mine, for recognition to flicker somewhere behind them, but when he finally did look at me, it was like staring into the eyes of a stranger. That night I couldn't sleep. The sound of sprinklers and distant cars faded into nothing as memories started flooding back. The night he left, my mom crying on the front porch, the police reports, the years of searching. I told myself he was dead just to move on, but here he was, alive, well, and pretending I didn't exist. The next morning, I decided to test it. Maybe it was a coincidence, maybe I was wrong. So I went out early just as he was walking his dog, a black lab with a perfect leash and a golden name tag that read Chief. "Morning," I said, my voice shaking slightly. He looked up, gave a polite nod, and smiled, that same half-smile he used to give when tucking me in. "Morning, neighbor, you're new here, right?" "Yeah, just moved into Unit 23. "Ah, welcome to Maplewood, I'm Robert, HOA president." Robert, he said it like it meant nothing, like it wasn't the name I used to cry out when nightmares woke me. "Thanks," I murmured, "nice to meet you." He shook my hand, firm, professional. His grip felt exactly the same, my chest ached. The moment he walked away, I had to sit down on the curb. I watched him go, shoulders squared, the world perfectly in control around him. I realized then he really didn't recognize me. For days I couldn't stop watching him. He was everywhere, checking lawns, signing papers, greeting neighbors like a man who belonged. It was hard to believe this was the same person who used to fix our old Chevy with grease-stained hands and laugh about burning dinner. I kept wondering what happened to him, why did he leave, and why was he living a new life just a few miles from where I grew up. I tried to keep to myself, but Maplewood wasn't the kind of place that let you stay invisible. The HOA sent letters about everything, from the color of your blinds to how long your trash bins stayed out. One morning, I found a bright yellow notice taped to my door. Violation 12, improper lawn maintenance. My lawn was barely 2 inches taller than my neighbor's. It felt personal. So I went to the next meeting, and once again he stood there, my father, handing out citations like they were candy. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up. "About the lawn notice," I said carefully. He looked down at his clipboard. "Unit 23, yes, the grass was slightly over HOA standards. You'll need to trim it this week to avoid a fine." Slightly, I couldn't help the edge in my voice. "Every yard on that street looks the same." He shrugged. "Rules are rules, they apply to everyone equally." Everyone equally? I almost laughed. I wanted to scream, "You don't even know who I am." Instead, I just said, "Of course, thank you, Mr. Robert." He nodded and moved on. That night, I pulled out an old photo album I'd kept buried in a box. The edges were worn, the pages faded. There he was, holding me on his shoulders, smiling beside my mom, our house behind us. On the back, my mom's handwriting, "Summer before everything changed." I stared at the photo for a long time, trying to find some clue in his face. He looked happy, so why had he left? The next few weeks were a blur of letters, warnings, and inspections. Every time I thought I was following the rules, another notice arrived. My fence was too high, my mailbox was HOA approved, my car was parked half a foot off the curb. It felt like he was targeting me, like somehow he sensed something familiar but didn't know what. Then one evening I caught him standing outside my house, clipboard in hand, staring at the porch light. I opened the door quietly. "Can I help you?" I asked. He turned, startled. "Ah, your porch bulb, wrong wattage, we have a standard for exterior lighting." I blinked. "You're serious?" He smiled again, polite and firm. "We maintain uniformity, it's what keeps Maplewood beautiful." I wanted to say, "You left your family to start a new one here," but instead I said, "Got it, I'll change it." He hesitated for a second, like something in my tone had struck him. His eyes softened just a little. "You remind me of someone," he said quietly. My throat went dry. "Really?" "Yes, someone I used to know a long time ago." Then he nodded, smiled faintly, and walked away. That night I broke down, not because he didn't remember, but because some part of him almost did. Days passed, and I found myself trapped between two worlds, the one where I was a homeowner following HOA rules, and the one where I was a son watching his father live like a stranger. I couldn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? My mother had passed 5 years ago, and there was no one left who remembered him except me. One afternoon, I decided to dig deeper. I went to the county clerk's office, pulled property records, and searched for Robert's name. What I found made my heart stop. He'd changed his last name 15 years ago from Callahan to Reed. My last name, the name he abandoned. But the biggest shock was this: he'd bought his house here under a trust, registered to a woman named Alina Reed. My mom's middle name was Alina. I didn't know what it meant. Was it a coincidence, a ghost of guilt, or some strange way of holding onto the past he tried to erase? The next day I saw him at the park with his dog again. I couldn't hold back anymore. I walked up to him, my heart pounding. "Mr. Reed," I said. He turned, smiling. "Hello again, neighbor." "I was wondering," I began, "how long have you lived here?" "Oh, about 15 years now. Moved here after some family things didn't work out." My chest tightened. "Family things?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, sometimes life gives you more than you can fix, you know." I swallowed hard. "Do you ever think about going back?" He chuckled softly. "No point in going back to ghosts. The past stays buried for a reason." And then he walked away. That night I couldn't breathe. The more I tried to understand, the more I realized I didn't want the truth, because if he really remembered, then he was pretending, and that was worse than forgetting. But then something happened that changed everything. A week later, I found an envelope taped to my door. No HOA letterhead, no fine, just my name written in shaky handwriting, "To the new homeowner of Unit 23. Inside was a folded note. It read, "Some things in this neighborhood aren't what they seem. If you're smart, you'll keep your distance from the president. He's not the man he pretends to be." My heart pounded. I looked around, scanning the street. Every house was dark, curtains closed, lights off. Who wrote that, and what did they know? The next morning, I noticed something even stranger. The house across the street, the one with the perfect roses and blue shutters, was suddenly empty. No cars, no lights, nothing, just a "for sale" sign that hadn't been there the day before. The name on the mailbox had been Mrs. Hartley. I'd talked to her once at the community picnic. She'd mentioned knowing Robert for a long, long time. And now she was gone. At that point, I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. I started asking quiet questions, talking to neighbors, pretending to be curious about community events. Most of them spoke highly of Robert Reed. "A good man," they said, "keeps things in order." But one neighbor, a nervous man named Carl, hesitated. "Why do you ask?" he said. "Just curious," I lied. Carl leaned closer. "Don't get on his bad side. People who do, they move away fast, or they just stop showing up to meetings." "What do you mean?" He looked around. "You didn't hear it from me, but Mrs. Hartley, she found something. Next week she was gone." That night I couldn't sleep again. My father, Robert, whatever his name was hiding something, something that made people disappear. I decided to confront him, not directly, not yet, but I wanted to see how far this went. So I went through the HOA's online portal and filed a fake complaint about myself just to see how he'd respond. I claimed Unit 23 has unauthorized property modifications. The next morning, sure enough, a white HOA truck pulled up. And he stepped out, clipboard in hand, same calm expression. "Good morning," he said. "Got a complaint about your unit." I crossed my arms. Funny, I didn't hear anything from my neighbors. Anonymous, he said smoothly, we take all complaints seriously. I watched his eyes as he walked around the property. For a second, he stopped near my porch, staring at a crack in the wall. Then he said something I didn't expect. You know, he murmured, I used to live in a house that looked a lot like this. I froze, really. He nodded. Back before things fell apart, my boy used to help me paint the porch every summer. I miss those days. I couldn't speak, my throat felt like sandpaper. What happened to him? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He looked away. He's gone. Gone. Yeah, he exhaled, his face tightening. He probably hates me and I wouldn't blame him. He started walking back to his car but then paused. Strange thing though, he added quietly, you have his eyes. And then he drove away. I stood there staring after him, my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. He knew, maybe not completely, maybe not consciously, but somewhere deep down he knew who I was. That night I took the note from the envelope and read it again. Some things in this neighborhood aren't what they seem. I turned it over. There was something faintly written on the back, barely visible under the light. I held it up closer and saw a single line. Ask him about the incident on Willow Creek. Willow Creek. It was the name of the street where I grew up. And that's when I realized, whoever wrote this note knew my father long before Maplewood. But how and why warn me now? I sat there at the kitchen table, the note trembling in my hands while outside sprinklers hissed and porch lights blinked in perfect, synchronized rows. Every house looked identical, every person smiled the same way, and somewhere among them was a man who used to be my father building a new life over the ruins of the one he destroyed. I didn't know what the incident on Willow Creek meant, but I was going to find out. Even if it meant tearing this perfect little neighborhood apart. The next morning I drove out of Maplewood before sunrise. The roads were quiet, the air heavy with that strange silence that comes right before a storm. I hadn't slept, not really. The words "ask him about the incident on Willow Creek" kept repeating in my head until they blended into the sound of the engine. Willow Creek was only 30 minutes away. I hadn't been there in almost 20 years. The last time I saw that street, it was flashing with red and blue lights, police cars lined up in front of our house. I was 10 years old, clutching my mother's hand while officers whispered things they thought I couldn't hear. When I pulled up to the old neighborhood, it looked smaller somehow, like time had folded in on itself. Our old house was still there, same chipped white fence, same oak tree leaning over the yard, but it wasn't ours anymore. A family lived there now. I could see kids' bikes scattered in the driveway. For a moment I just sat in the car watching them play, pretending they were me and my father before everything broke. I needed answers, so I went to the local records office, hoping someone had kept something from back then. The clerk, an older woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, squinted at me when I gave her the address. Willow Creek, you said you're looking for an incident report. Yes, I said, about 20 years ago, house fire, missing person, something like that. She frowned. We don't have much digitized from that far back, but give me a minute. She disappeared into a back room filled with boxes. While she was gone, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, fear, not of what I'd find, but of what it might mean if my father really did disappear on purpose, if he chose to forget us. The clerk came back holding a thin manila folder. This is all we have on that address, she said. You can look, but don't remove anything. I opened it carefully. Inside were only a few pages, an incident report dated June 3, 2005. It said, domestic disturbance reported. Neighbors heard shouting, possible altercation. Upon arrival, one individual missing from the scene, Robert Callahan, vehicle left behind, case closed after 90 days. That was it, no follow-up, no explanation, just missing. But at the bottom, in faint handwriting, someone had added a note, see supplemental file, fire report lot 17. Can I see this supplemental file? I asked. She sighed. If it still exists, it'll be in the archives. It did exist, and it changed everything. The fire report described a blaze 2 streets away from our old home just days after my father went missing. A small shed had burned down. No injuries, no victims, but the listed owner of the property was a man named James Reed. Reed. The name he'd taken years later. I left the office with my head spinning. The timing was too close. It wasn't coincidence he'd staged something, but why to disappear, to start over, or to hide something darker? As I was about to start my car, my phone buzzed. It was a blocked number. "Hello," I said. A woman's voice came through, shaky and low. "You shouldn't be digging around, Daniel." My heart skipped. "Who is this?" "Someone who's trying to keep you alive," she whispered. "He doesn't like when people ask about Willow Creek." "How do you know about that?" "You're not the first person to move into Unit 23. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, frozen. What did she mean? Someone else had lived in my house before me, of course, but what happened to them? When I got back to Maplewood, I noticed something immediately. Robert's SUV was parked outside my driveway. My stomach dropped. He was standing there, arms crossed, talking to another HOA member. They both turned when they saw me. "Afternoon," Robert said, his tone calm but sharp. "We've had a few reports about unusual visitors near your property." "Visitors?" I asked, trying to steady my voice. He nodded. "Someone said they saw you leaving early this morning. You know, Maplewood has a strict security policy. We prefer residents to log any extended absences." "I didn't know I needed permission to leave town," I said flatly. He smiled, cold, polite. "Not permission, just transparency. We like to keep things orderly." As he spoke, I noticed something, a small scar near his left temple just above the eyebrow. It hadn't been there when I was a kid. It looked recent, maybe a few years old. I wanted to ask how he got it, but instead I said I was visiting some old family property. His expression flickered just for a moment. "Family property?" "Yes," I said, "on Willow Creek." That did it. His eyes froze, his jaw tightened. He looked at me for a long time, then forced another smile. "Small world," he said quietly. "You should be careful digging into old places. Some things are better left where they belong." He turned and walked away, his dog trotting beside him. But as he passed the mailbox, I noticed him glance at my house again, like he knew something I didn't. That night, I couldn't sit still. I searched every corner of Unit 23, attic, basement, crawl space, anything that might explain what the woman on the phone meant. Around midnight, I found something. Behind a loose panel in the basement wall was a small metal box, dust-covered, sealed with rust. My hands shook as I pried it open. Inside were photographs. Not of me, not of him, but of other families, different homeowners, smiling in front of the same house. Some dated as far back as 10 years ago. The last photo showed a woman standing on my porch holding a dog. On the back, someone had written, "Unit 23, violation pending." The woman looked familiar. I'd seen her once on the HOA website in a list of former residents. Her name was Linda Hartley. The same Mrs. Hartley who'd vanished. I stared at the photo for a long time, trying to process what it meant. What kind of HOA kept records of old residents like trophies? The next morning, I went to Carl again, the nervous neighbor who'd warned me before. He was sitting on his porch, smoking. "Carl," I said quietly, "what happened to Mrs. Hartley?" He froze. "Why are you asking?" "Because I found her picture in my basement." His eyes widened. "You need to get out," he whispered. "Right now, you don't understand what this place is." "Then tell me." He looked around, then leaned closer. "You think this is just a neighborhood? It's not. The HOA isn't about lawns or fences, it's about control. Reed doesn't let people leave unless he wants them gone." "Why?" "Because he's hiding something. Everyone who figures it out disappears. Hartley was one of them." I swallowed hard. "What did she find?" Carl shook his head. "I don't know. She tried to tell me once something about the records, about who really owns the land. She said she found documents in the HOA office that didn't match the county files. The next week she packed her car. She never made it out." "What do you mean, never made it out?" He looked at me with haunted eyes. "Her car was gone in the morning, but she wasn't in it." A chill went down my spine. That night I drove past the HOA office, a small brick building near the community entrance. The lights were off, the blinds closed. I waited until the guard's truck made its rounds, then slipped around to the back door. It was locked, but the window above the handle was cracked. I used a screwdriver to push the latch open and climbed inside. The office smelled like old paper and disinfectant. File cabinets lined the walls, labeled by year. I scanned them until I found the one marked ownership records. My hands were trembling as I pulled it open. There it was, Unit 23. Owner history. Linda Hartley, transferred 2021. Mark Lewis, deceased 2018. Jennifer Cole, deceased 2015. 3 names, all with quiet endings. I checked the others. Unit 24, Unit 25, Unit 27, all with similar notes: transferred, deceased, vacant. It wasn't random. As I was photographing the files with my phone, I heard something outside, the sound of a door clicking open. My heart jumped. I ducked behind the desk just as footsteps echoed down the hallway. The light flicked on. Robert's voice filled the room, calm, measured, terrifyingly steady. "I know you're here, Daniel." I froze. He took a few slow steps closer. "You shouldn't have gone to Willow Creek. That place doesn't belong to us anymore." I could see his shadow moving across the floor. He wasn't angry, he was disappointed, like a parent scolding a child. "I didn't want it to come to this," he said quietly, "but you left me no choice." I bolted. I ran straight for the back door, crashing through the night air, sprinting across the empty street. I didn't look back until I was inside my house, locking the door behind me. My chest was burning, my hands shaking. Through the window, I could see him standing by the sidewalk, watching me, not chasing, just watching. And then he smiled. The next morning, I got another envelope on my porch. Same shaky handwriting as before. "You're close, look under the clubhouse, basement entrance behind the vending machine." My first instinct was to leave, to pack my bags and never look back, but something stronger pulled me in. I needed to know, not just what he'd done, but why. That evening, when the neighborhood was quiet, I made my way to the clubhouse. The building was locked, but I pried open a side window and climbed in. The vending machine stood against the far wall, humming softly. I pushed it aside, heavy but movable. Behind it, a small metal door, rusted shut. I pulled until it groaned open, revealing a narrow staircase leading underground. The air was cold and stale. My flashlight flickered as I descended. The deeper I went, the stronger the smell: metal, dust, something chemical. When I reached the bottom, I saw a door, and beyond it, a room lined with filing cabinets identical to the ones in the office above. Except these weren't property files. They were personnel files. I opened the first drawer. Inside were photographs, IDs, documents, all of the missing residents. Each file had a red stamp across it: terminated. My hands trembled as I flipped through them. Every face I saw was someone I'd seen around the neighborhood at some point, and then I found one that made my knees go weak. It was a child's photo, a boy, dark hair, green eyes. The label read Callahan Daniel, status presumed deceased. That was me. Before I could process what I was seeing, I heard footsteps above me, slow, deliberate, the echo of shoes on tile. Robert's voice drifted down the stairs. "Now you've really seen too much, son." I froze. The sound of his voice slithered through the air like smoke, steady and calm, yet heavy with something darker. He wasn't shouting, he wasn't angry. That almost made it worse. I turned off my flashlight, standing in the dark, trying to quiet my breathing. The footsteps grew louder as he descended the metal stairs. Each creak echoed like a heartbeat, my heartbeat. "Daniel," he said again, slower this time, "you shouldn't have come down here. None of them should have." None of them. My stomach twisted. That meant Mrs. Hartley, Mark Lewis, Jennifer Cole. They had all found this place too. I looked around frantically, searching for another exit. There was none, only the stairway above and his silhouette now appearing at the doorway. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness, sweeping across the room until it landed on me. He sighed softly. "I didn't want you to see this, not you." I stepped back, my voice shaking. "You knew who I was this whole time." He didn't answer at first, just stared, the light trembling slightly in his hand. Then he said, "Of course I knew. I recognized you the first week. You have your mother's eyes." My chest felt hollow. "Then why pretend?" "Because pretending kept you safe." "Safe from what?" He stepped closer, the beam lighting the wall behind me, rows of labeled boxes, my name among them. "From the people who own this place, from what Maplewood really is." "What are you talking about?" I demanded. He glanced around, lowering his voice. "You think this is just an HOA? A bunch of neighbors arguing about fences? This land was part of a redevelopment project years ago. They used it to cover something: financial fraud, money laundering, even blackmail. Every house here is registered under shell corporations. The HOA isn't managing homes, it's managing people. Everyone who lives here is part of their system, their experiment. I shook my head. That's insane. He gave a bitter laugh. You think I wanted to be part of this? I tried to leave. That's why I disappeared from Willow Creek, but they found me, told me my family would be collateral if I didn't cooperate. I could barely breathe, so you left us to protect us. I thought I was. His voice cracked slightly. But they watched you anyway. After your mother died, they made sure you couldn't find me, and when you bought a house here, I knew it was only a matter of time before you saw too much. I wanted to scream. Every emotion I'd buried for 20 years, grief, anger, confusion, collided all at once. You let them take people, you worked for them. I tried to keep people safe, he said quietly. When they started investigating the records, I had to make it look like they moved away. It was the only way to stop them from. He stopped himself, looking at me with sudden urgency. Daniel, you have to leave tonight. Don't tell anyone, just go. No, I stepped closer, voice trembling. Not until you tell me what happened to the others. His eyes darkened. You don't want to know. Yes, I do. He looked at the floor. The files you saw, they're not just records, they're dossiers. Each one marks a person who discovered the truth about Maplewood. The board, the real owners, they deal with those people quietly. No bodies, no trails, they erase them from the system. And when someone disappears, I sign the report. You sign I choked on the words. You helped them cover murders. He closed his eyes. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. The silence between us felt endless. The fluorescent light flickered above, casting his face in half shadow, one side the father I remembered, the other a stranger made of guilt. Finally, he whispered, I thought I could keep it under control, but you being here changes everything. They'll come for you next. Then come with me, I said. We can expose them, go to the police. He almost smiled, but it wasn't from joy, it was pity. You think I haven't tried? Every police report goes straight to their lawyers. They own everything from City Hall to the county clerk's office. You'd vanish before you finished your statement. The sound of an engine outside cut through the air, low, rumbling, getting closer. He turned sharply toward the stairs. They're here. Who? The board. He grabbed my arm. Listen to me, there's a back exit through the storage duct behind that cabinet. Crawl through it, don't stop, it'll lead you behind the maintenance shed. What about you? He hesitated. They think you're still in the dark. If I stay, I can buy you time. No, I said, my throat raw. I'm not leaving you again. His grip tightened. You have to. You were the only good thing I ever did, and I won't let them destroy that too. Voices echoed from above, muffled but urgent. He shoved me toward the cabinet. Go. I pulled it aside, revealing a narrow opening. I turned back once. Dad. He met my eyes. For a split second, the man I'd lost 20 years ago was standing there, the one who used to sing off-key while fixing the car, the one who'd promised me everything would be all right. Run, Danny, he said softly, and don't look back. I crawled into the duct, heart pounding, dust choking my lungs. Behind me, I heard doors slamming open, heavy footsteps descending the stairs, then muffled voices, cold, professional. Then a sound that made my blood freeze. A gunshot. I stopped crawling, pressing my hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. Another shot followed, then silence. My entire body shook. I wanted to go back, but his last words echoed in my head, don't look back. I kept crawling until I saw faint light ahead. The vent opened behind the maintenance shed just like he said. I stumbled out, covered in dirt and shaking. The street was quiet, too quiet. No alarms, no sirens, nothing to mark what had just happened beneath that perfect little clubhouse. I didn't go home, I couldn't. Instead, I got in my car and drove until the rows of identical houses vanished behind me. I didn't stop until I reached a motel 2 towns away. For hours, I sat on the bed replaying everything. The files, the voices, the gunshot. I wanted to believe he was still alive, that maybe he'd gotten away somehow, but deep down I knew better. Around midnight my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Daniel, the voice said softly. A woman again, the same one who'd called me before. You made it out. Who are you? I demanded. What is this place? What did they do to him? She hesitated. Your father knew too much. He wasn't supposed to let you in, but he tried to protect you like he always did. What do they want? Control, she said. The HOA is a front for a land reclamation project. The board builds communities on top of contaminated land, places they can't legally sell. They use fake residents, false records, and when someone real moves in by accident, someone like you, they make sure they disappear quietly. My voice shook. Then why are you helping me? Because I was one of them, she said. Until I found out what they did to my husband, I've been trying to shut them down ever since. Where are you? Don't ask, just listen. You need to leave the state. They'll erase you from the system next. Everything, your ID, your bank accounts, your car, they'll make it like you never existed. I looked out the window. A black SUV passed slowly down the road, headlights off. It's too late, I whispered. She paused. Then record everything. Upload the files, the photos, the documents. Let the world see Maplewood for what it is. And then the line went dead. I sat there, staring at my phone until I realized what I had to do. I opened my laptop, transferred every photo I'd taken from the underground room, every document I'd found. Then I started writing. My name is Daniel Callahan. If you're reading this, Maplewood Estates isn't what it seems. The man you know as Robert Reed was my father, and he died trying to expose the truth. I was halfway through uploading the files when I heard it, a faint clicking sound outside the door. I froze. Then footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming closer. The motel room doorknob turned once, twice, then a voice, calm and measured, spoke through the door. Daniel, open up, we just want to talk. I backed away, shaking, staring at the glowing laptop screen as the upload bar crept past 90%. Another voice whispered, closer this time, you can't run from the board, you belong to Maplewood now. The lock rattled. 95%, 98. I grabbed the chair and jammed it under the handle. My heart felt like it would burst. A crash, the door splintered. One last second, one last click. Upload complete. I yanked the power cord, grabbed the laptop, and climbed out the bathroom window just as the door gave way. I hit the ground hard, rolling into the shadows behind the building. Men in dark suits stormed the room, their voices cold and sharp. Find him. I didn't stop running until I reached the main road. Cars flew by, headlights streaking across the asphalt. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I kept moving. Somewhere behind me, Maplewood was still out there, silent, spotless, a perfect trap for the next unlucky family. When the sun rose hours later, I stood on the edge of a gas station parking lot, staring at the horizon. I didn't have my father, I didn't have my home, but I had his truth, and maybe that was enough. Or so I thought. Because when I checked my laptop again, the upload link was gone. Every file, every document erased. And in their place, one new folder. It was labeled simply, Unit 24 Pending. When I walked back to my car that night, the entire street was silent. The streetlights flickered in soft amber halos and the HOA office behind me stood dark, the sign that read Community Board President Robert Hayes glowing faintly under the light. My father's name, my missing father, the man who had once carried me on his shoulders when I was 4, the man who'd vanished from my life without a trace 20 years ago. I sat in the car for a long time watching the empty office. My chest ached with confusion, disbelief, anger, all tangled into something I couldn't name. He had looked right at me, talked to me, spoken in that same calm, clipped tone I remembered from childhood, but he hadn't recognized me, not even a flicker. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel and tried to breathe. Part of me wanted to run, just get out of that neighborhood, sell the house, forget everything. But the other part, the part that had driven across the country to find out why this HOA was harassing me, that part needed answers. I opened my glove box and pulled out the old photograph I always kept with me as a kid, sitting on my dad's lap in front of a blue pickup truck. He was smiling, his arm around my shoulder. The same eyes, the same faint scar above his eyebrow, there was no mistake. The next morning, I returned to the HOA office. I told the secretary I wanted to file an appeal about the fines on my property. She gave me a time slot, 3 p.m. the president would be there. When I walked in, he was already seated behind the table flipping through some paperwork. He didn't look up immediately, but when he did, he smiled politely. Mr. Carson, right? I reviewed your complaint, let's go over it. My heart thudded. That voice, calm, deep, patient, was the same one that used to read me bedtime stories. Yes, I said, forcing the word through dry lips. That's me. We sat across from each other, a wide wooden table between us. He spoke about regulations, bylaws, community standards, all the things a normal HOA president would. I barely heard any of it. I was staring at the ring on his finger, the same silver band he'd worn when he was with my mom. I wanted to say it right there, "Do you remember me?" but I couldn't. My throat tightened every time I tried. Instead, I asked about the fine. He walked me through it, page by page, patient and composed. At the end, he said, "I know it feels unfair, but if you submit proof that the previous owner didn't inform you about the restrictions, we can waive the penalties." That sentence, logical, formal, hit me like a wall. He had no idea who I was. When I left, I saw him step outside talking to another board member. He laughed, that same half-chuckle I remembered from when I was a kid and spilled juice on the carpet. It was him, there was no doubt. I drove home and called my mother. She didn't answer. She never liked talking about him anyway. So I sat alone on my couch, surrounded by unopened boxes and silence, trying to piece together a plan. That night I looked him up online. Robert Hayes, president of Oak Ridge Estates HOA, former architect. Moved to the town 15 years ago, married, 2 kids, my half-siblings apparently. Their family photos were online, a smiling couple, a teenage boy, a younger girl. I stared at them for a long time, my pulse pounding. He had built a whole new life, a life that didn't include me. But something didn't add up. His timeline said he moved to this town just a year after he disappeared, which meant he never went missing, he left. The next day I walked around the neighborhood pretending to take pictures of houses for renovation ideas, but really I was observing him. His house was 3 streets away from mine, large, modern, perfectly manicured. At exactly 7:30 every morning he left for a jog. At 8 he returned, kissed his wife on the cheek and waved to neighbors. He looked happy, like a man who'd never abandoned anyone. I should have hated him, but all I felt was a strange emptiness. One evening I saw his car parked in front of the community park. He was sitting on a bench, reading. I gathered my courage and walked up, pretending I didn't know him. "Evening," I said. He looked up and smiled. "Oh. Mr. Carson, settling in well, I hope." "Trying to," I said. "I wanted to thank you for your help with the appeal." He nodded. "Of course, we try to be fair." I hesitated, then asked, "Can I ask something personal?" He raised an eyebrow. "Depends on the question." "Did you ever live in Brookdale, Illinois?" His eyes flickered just a split second before he shook his head. "No, I don't believe so. Why?" I shrugged. "Just thought you looked familiar." He smiled again, but it didn't reach his eyes. "People tell me that a lot." That night I sat in my car watching his house from a distance. The lights inside flickered as his family moved through rooms. Laughter, shadows, warmth, everything I used to have. The next few days I started noticing something odd. Whenever I came home, I'd see a car parked down the street, black sedan, tinted windows. Sometimes when I left early for work, the same car was idling near the corner. Then one afternoon I caught someone standing near my mailbox, a man in a dark jacket. He turned and walked away the moment he saw me. I opened the mailbox and found an unmarked envelope. Inside was a single photo, my father, much younger, standing beside a different woman, not my mother, written on the back, "You don't know everything." My stomach dropped. I went to confront him the next morning, but when I reached the HOA office, the secretary told me he wasn't in. "Family emergency," she said. "He'll be back next week." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept looking at the photo, flipping it over, trying to make sense of it. Who sent it? Why now? A week later, when he returned, I noticed he seemed different, tired, cautious. When he saw me in the parking lot, he paused. "Mr. Carson, how's your case coming along?" "I actually needed to talk to you," I said quietly. "It's about something personal." He hesitated. "All right, let's step inside." Once we were in his office, I placed the photo on his desk. He froze, his hand trembled slightly as he picked it up. "Where did you get this?" "I found it in my mailbox," I said. "No name, no return address." He stared at the image for a long time, then whispered, "This shouldn't exist." "Who is she?" I asked. He sighed, setting the photo down. "Someone I used to know a long time ago." I leaned forward. "In Brookdale, Illinois." He looked at me sharply. "Why do you keep bringing up that place?" "Because," I said slowly, "that's where I grew up, and where my father disappeared 20 years ago." His face went pale. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Finally, he said, "Mr. Carson, I think there's been a misunderstanding." But his voice shook. I leaned in, "Maybe, or maybe you just don't remember what you left behind." He stood up abruptly. "This conversation is over." I rose too, meeting his gaze. "Do you really not recognize me?" He blinked. "What are you talking about?" I reached into my jacket and pulled out the old photograph, the one of us in front of the pickup truck. I placed it beside the one from the envelope. His eyes darted between them, his face draining of color. And for the first time, I saw it: recognition. Barely a whisper escaped his lips. "Ethan." My chest tightened. "Yeah, Dad, it's me." He stumbled back into his chair, staring at me like he was seeing a ghost. "I thought you," his voice broke, "I thought you were gone." "I was never gone," I said, my voice trembling. "You were." Silence filled the room. He ran a hand over his face, tears gathering in the corners of his eyes. "You don't understand, I didn't have a choice." "Didn't have a choice?" I snapped. "You disappeared. Mom cried every night for years. We thought you were dead." He looked down, shaking his head. "If I could tell you everything, I would, but it's not that simple." "Then make it simple," I said. "Tell me why you left." He hesitated, then glanced toward the office window as if checking for someone outside. "You shouldn't have come here, Ethan. There are things you don't know about this place." "What are you talking about?" He leaned in, voice low. "This HOA, it's not what you think, it's a front for something else." Before I could respond, the door opened, the secretary stepped in. "Mr. Hayes, the board is waiting." He straightened immediately, slipping back into his composed persona. "I'll be right there," he said, his tone calm again. When she left, he whispered quickly, "Meet me tonight, by the old maintenance shed near the lake, 9 o'clock, don't tell anyone." And before I could ask another word, he walked out. That night I waited by the lake. The air was cold, the water still. The shed loomed in the darkness. I checked my watch, 9:05, 9:10. At 9:15 I heard footsteps. But when I turned, it wasn't him. It was the man in the dark jacket. He stopped a few feet away, staring at me. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "Who are you?" I demanded. He didn't answer. He just took something from his pocket, a folded piece of paper, and tossed it at my feet before walking away into the shadows. I picked it up. It was a photo again. This time it was me standing outside my house, taken from a distance. On the back, written in the same handwriting, "Stop digging or you'll end up just like him." And as I looked up, I realized my father never came to that meeting. He was gone again. But this time I had a feeling he wasn't just missing. Something had happened to him. And whatever it was, it had everything to do with the HOA.